Hi everyone. Thank you for coming here. I know it's a rainy Saturday. Thanks for taking the time to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month with us. This is the first of hopefully a series of conversations that will be hosted here at PMT. Thank you for everyone who is joining virtually in the safety and warmth probably of your home spaces. We'll start, so just to talk a little bit about the format of the conversation, we'll start by talking about our personal AAPI journeys, our stories, and then we'll go into 3 or 4 major questions that we'll kind of sit with for 20 or so minutes, and then towards the end we'll have some quick fire questions that'll be more like a 1-minute answer for each. And then hopefully, which we've allotted time, but if conversations get juicy, we'll see where things go, but we definitely want to get questions from all of you all as well. So yeah, thank you for joining the conversation. Some things that are helpful, and we can also do like a verbal yes for group agreements in this conversation, is that one, we are sharing our personal stories, so acknowledging that AAPI is not a monolith. We're talking about our own personal stories to glean from them what resonates with you, take that on your journey, and also honor the space of if there's something personal or confidential that's said, it's a space that stays here or in the virtual space as well. Definitely wanting to make sure that you take care of yourself. If you need water, you need to take a break, you can do that. And as well, just a mutual space of respect for each other, respect for the space, respect for the thoughts and ideas that come up in conversation today. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that. And then I'll pass it on. Maybe I'll go last, but starting, we'll share our AAPI journey and what got us to where we are and the intersection of that and being in the arts as a dancer. So I'll pass it to Pavan since you're the closest.
Thank you. So I am an Indian American. I am the oldest son of 2 Indian immigrants who came here with nothing more than dreams and a little bit of money, and worked really hard and started from my father, for example, was a secretary and a clerk and became a judge. A clerk meaning a clerk in a store. And he worked his way up, although when he was in India, he was already a borough president. He wanted a better life, abandoned that, came here, worked his way up, became a judge. My mom was Nurse of the Year in the state of New York 2 times. And if anyone has met my mom, you know that that's her personality. She has cookies in her bag, she'll take you Band-Aid, she'll take care of you. She's a great person. But in terms of how I got into the arts, it was really in total opposition to what my parents wanted me to do. I went to school to study medicine. I graduated with a degree in psychology and pre-med, and I was taking a year off before planning to go to medical school, and in that year off, I was like, let me dance a little bit. And here I am 22 years later, still kicking and going. So the arts I found a very welcome space within the arts community. Dance was my escape. It was how I found confidence and how I gave myself a sense of purpose. So that is how I found myself here as an AAPI artist. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Minnie. Okay, I hate speaking on the mic, but here we are. We're gonna get used to it today. I was born and raised in China. I'm Chinese. Recently became Chinese American, but I'm more Chinese than American in terms of how I grew up and how I was brought up. And I came to America for college, and I started dancing back home when I was in China, when hip hop was this new thing, was this cool thing, was this it was what the cool kids do, and I was the cool kids, one of the cool kids. But I was not just dancing, I was also playing a band. I was playing guitar, and I thought I was going to be a rock star. Okay, that was me in high school. I didn't think I was going to do this at all, but I was into arts. I was into, music and dance, obviously, and that's not what my parents wanted, even though they were themselves very into music when they were in college, but they were already within one of the top schools in China. So, it was just a hobby. they loved it, but when they realized I loved it so much, they started getting concerned. They're like, what do you mean you want to do this? You know, because at that time, I really didn't know what else. I didn't have anything else that I wanted to do, to be honest. So I came to America, went to college, didn't think I was going to do this either, and I was just like trying out things, you know, studying different things, and I came to New York because I actually joined this little college dance team, and it reminded me of how much I love dance, and so I came to New York where hip hop was birthed. You know, there's for people that are that are from overseas, we know New York as the birthplace of hip hop. So I thought I was gonna come to New York and it's gonna be in the 90s and when it was gonna be the music videos. You'll take classes with the OGs of hip hop dance all the time. It's not very much like that, but still, at least when I came around, there was still a pretty strong community and the underground community for street styles, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot more clubs. So I actually was in heaven because I was like, this is amazing. There are so many different amazing dance cultures and dance artists that are not dancers, they're just movement. They're just it's the culture that really drew me to stay in New York. Because at that time, I was not clear with what I wanted to do with my life, but I was like, this is something that I don't think I could find anywhere else. I want to experience this. I want to see more. So I moved here, out to school, and the rest of my journey unfolded. We can go on forever, but I think this is supposed to be a brief answer. So here I am today. Yes.
Thank you, Minnie. Whoa. Hey. I wanted to be a singer before I became a dancer, so working on the voice. My name is Vive Khamsingsavath. I go by Vive. I gave myself that name when I was 5 years old. It means to live in Spanish, and I feel like it was destined to be that way. I go by he, him pronouns. My family comes from Laos. My parents came as refugees as a result of the Vietnam War. Laos is a country next to Thailand and Vietnam. It's very beautiful. My parents are Buddhists, but they left. My mother actually escaped in the middle of the night and fled across the Mekong River to Thailand before she got a plane ticket to come to America. But both of them didn't plan to come to America. They were forced to do so. So I feel incredibly grateful for their journey. And I identify more with being Laos as an adult than I did when I was younger because I didn't understand how they came to be in America. I thought, we were just born and this is how we live, but I feel like their journey is my journey and I feel their story in my DNA and I feel the story of the Lao people in my DNA. Laos is beautiful, but I also want to share that Laos is the most bombed country in the world. There were over 65 million bombs left unexploded from the Vietnam War, and there are still bombs left unexploded there. President Obama was the first person to visit Laos and to give it the recognition that it deserves. So right now they're working on clearing a lot of the bombs that are left in the field still. Anyways, I share that because my family, they're the hardest working people that I know, and I look up to them, and I didn't know that until, again, I was an adult. So I think a lot of the work ethic that they showed me as a kid was instilled within me. I feel like I'm very hardworking in the sense that I always want to be my best. I'm always on time, punctual. I want to make sure everything's accomplished in a timely manner, and then just kind of over the top, kind of like Rachel Berry from Glee. We love vocals. So I feel like the reason why I am the way that I am is because my parents had to work so hard to survive in America, and I think that is the reason I am the way that I am. I am proud to be a Laotian American artist in New York City. I'm proud of what I've been able to achieve because I think for me it's an homage to what my parents have done for me. Thank you.
We have to do a little sample, Sample.
Oh my god, the Filipino. Yeah, that's right. Karaoke.
Hey y'all, what's up? Thank you guys for coming, first and foremost. Yeah, my name is Pauline Casiño. Sometimes the tilde on the end is forgotten, but I'm trying to own it so that everyone remembers it. American alphabet is just not it. The English alphabet is just not it. But my story, I'm currently 24. Half my life, it was in the Philippines, then the other half now currently is here. But I definitely identify more Filipino than Filipino American. Even though if I do go home now, everyone's like, they can smell the American off me. But here on my present day, and then the way I kind of just walk and speak, and the values that are instilled in me are definitely way more Filipino than it is whatever the melting pot that it is here. But yeah, I was born and raised in the Philippines, Cagayan de Oro City in Mindanao, so I'm Bisaya. I speak Bisaya and I also speak Tagalog. But English was my second language, which is crazy, which I feel like is common for a lot of kids back home. But I was born and raised there. I moved here, and I'm the oldest in a family of 5, 3 kids, and then my parents. And so I think as the older child in the family, there's an expectation on you to be like, okay, you're gonna whatever happens, you're gonna end up great and you're gonna make money, right? And so being born and raised there with those values in mind, I moved here when I was 12 in 2010. Yeah, so 12 years old, and I've never taken a dance class until I moved here. I think it was 13 when I took my very first dance class, and it was just for it's cute, it's fun, okay, glitter. And everything that I did back home before moving here was really just YouTube, ABDC. Little girl was doing Jabberwocky's routines, okay? She learned all that. And I think that, again, that's a very common thing back home. Like if you wanna, especially in the area I was in, if you wanna take dancing as like a serious art, which barely any people did, it was very expensive and it's just not accessible at all. And so one of the first things I really wanted to do when I moved here was like, oh my God, where can I take a dance class? But even then, considering that my parents are immigrants, I'm an immigrant myself. My kids will be first gen. Money was still an issue, and I didn't want to be that older sister just kind of like grabbing all the resources, and leaving nothing for my little sisters. And so I ended up kind of taking myself away from the dance classes, and this was like a regular studio where kids learn ballet, jazz, everything, all that jazz, right? Taking myself away from that, and then just telling my parents, hey, I'll just do this after school, at my school, at a public school in the Bronx. And that was another thing, like I lived in, I moved straight to the Bronx, and so that experience in itself was just like, birthplace again of hip hop. And you don't see a lot of Asian people in the Bronx. And I think that was definitely another hurdle that I had to face, where it's like, okay, I'm uncomfortable right away, because I am surrounded by people that I've never seen, types and kinds of people, and even color of people that I've never seen in my life until I moved here. But that, because a lot of people around me, even in the public school system, were very into dancing, that was my first time where I actually found a community where I could just dance for no reason, really, it's just for fun. And then I found the community, like the New Jersey, New York community, predominantly Asian, where we compete and whatnot, and I did that since I was 14. Barely really took it seriously. I was barely in rehearsals because I was a lazy girl. So I wasn't really in many pieces. So I was in, but it's fine. I was just lazy because I had to go to the city to do that. And then all the way from Bronx to the city, it's too much. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But it did help me foster my artistic abilities. I was able to choreograph at such a young age, and telling older people to do this, like I don't even know why they were listening to me. But I'm very thankful for being a part of that community, because it gave me so much freedom to just try out whatever the hell I wanted in terms of my own style, and just like the types of dances that I could even do. Like I was never really boxed into anything. And then I went to college. I graduated in 2020 amidst the pandemic. I earned a degree in chemistry. So random, but I did love it. And it's something that my mom was a chemical engineer before she moved here, and then she became a nurse. Crazy. I don't know how she did all that.
So that was definitely a pathway that I was very committed to doing. Like I wasn't scared to be, okay, I'll do chemistry, I'll work in the cosmetic industry, like that's what I wanted to do. In my junior year, I remember telling myself, like, I'm gonna quit dance. Like, I'm just not even gonna pursue this. And I was perfectly fine with that. Like, there was no battle really. But it was that same time that I said it to myself that things started happening. I started teaching a Perry dance, and I think the universe, for some reason, was like, no, girl, you're gonna keep doing this. And I think given the pandemic, I was given time to kind of just sit and do nothing and not really forced to do anything. And I think that was the time that really let me settle and be like, okay, maybe this is something that I want to try. And yeah, and then things just started snowballing from there, and now we're here.
Hello, I'm Belza. I am Filipino and Chinese. My parents came from the Philippines. My mom is half Chinese, but they lived in the Philippines, so I'm first gen. My dad didn't finish school, so growing up, I guess the pressure of like getting a degree and getting a good job was very, very instilled in me because of how he grew up, because he didn't have a high school diploma, he didn't have all that. But my mom, did nursing when she moved here. She hated it, but found phlebotomy. So she worked for the New York Blood Center for like almost 30 years. She is now retired, so yay. But art, I guess, was always instilled while I was growing up. She played multiple instruments. My grandpa, her dad, allowed their kids to draw and do all that stuff and do all the artistic things. So she was very for that, like made my brother learn guitar and piano. I wasn't good at it. I was also lazy. I like went every week and there would be a new lesson and be like, I forgot the last lesson. So I don't really know how to play the piano really well. I know how to read the right hand, but I don't know how to read the left hand because that's too hard. I just have to write it in. But I went to school wanting to do fine art. So I was like, I'm gonna work at a museum when I grow up. I wanna be a curator and all that stuff. And my mom was all for that. She was like, sure, whatever, do what you want. So I went to a program in high school where I got to go to a university and learn like fine arts from like a college professor at a young age. And like I was in a program, you had to like submit and apply to get into it. And I made it past the first round, made it past the second round. And at that point I was in high school and I was like, I don't want to do this for 8 hours a day. I don't want to do this going home after school. I want a social life. So I said no so I can have friends, which probably in hindsight wasn't the best idea, but it led me here to dance. And dance was always just a thing that I did with my cousins. We like watched MTV and learned NSYNC choreography off music videos and like Britney Spears and all that stuff because we didn't have YouTube back then. And I grew up in Jersey City and New York is like literally right there, but I had no idea what dance class was. So I didn't know about going into the city and taking class until I was in college and I joined the community. I joined the dance team and like dance was just a hobby for me. And I was just like, this is fun. Other Asians are dancing too. This is also fun. Oh my God, we're the same. Ah, that's crazy. And like my parents were all for it because it was just a hobby. And I think they started to realize that I like loved it a lot. And I worked full time. I got a degree in graphic design. And I started working right away after college for a company for 5 years. And throughout my entire time while working, all I thought about was dance. I was a director for one of the teams back in Jersey, and like that was my life. I was thinking about new routines, thinking about how we can get this team to win and compete and all that stuff. So my brain was not where work was. And I was like, can I do this like as a job? Can I like, pursue dance and be an artist and like live off of that and like also have my parents be okay with that? So that was hard. But I took the leap, quit my job, and after that, just like Pauline said, like things just started snowballing. I started getting offers to teach at studios here in the city, and I was just like, oh, I guess this is a good thing. And yeah, and then I got signed to an agency and with MSA. And I think for that, my dad still wasn't sure about this as a job because there wasn't much money in it yet. And then I got my first gig, which was like a photo shoot for NFL. And I'm on the website and I like showed him and he was like so happy because it was something tangible that he can show people. And he was like, this is my son, take a screenshot, I want to send it to all my friends. And I was like, oh, so I made it finally. So yeah, now I'm here and teaching is like what I've been doing mostly, but yeah.
Okay, and I'll do a quick one for myself, and then I just realized too, just, as to acknowledge that if we are all sitting in the space, probably virtually or in person, and we're AAPI, that we are in a diaspora. We are removed from our homelands, our lands of ancestry. So in that same acknowledgement, want to acknowledge that we are also on occupied land. We are in Monopoly land, which is also known as New York. Just wanted to say that. And then for myself, I use pronouns he, him, very similar to Pauline and Bo, and it's really cool to hear stories because we've known each other for a while, but hearing our family stories is just a level that you don't always get within the same community. So yeah, I use he and pronouns. I'm born and raised in New York, and my lineage both my parents are from the Philippines. On my mom's side, the lineage is from Butuan, Leyte, and Spain. And then on my dad's side, the lineage is from Butuan, Bacolod, and China. So I identify as Filipino X, American, or the word Hapa. If you haven't heard that before, it's the Hawaiian word for part Asian or mixed Asian. I'm not Kanaka Maoli, native Hawaiian, but I feel very close to that culture. I used to live there for a little bit. And then for me, for dance, I'm of the generation that's right after America's Best Dance Cruise. So definitely, when I go back, my first style, luckily, I was born and raised in Queens, and it's the 11373 Elmhurst is the most diverse zip code for many years. You can fact check it in National Geographic. And luckily, we had traditions of having World Day or International Day. And each year I would learn from a different culture and learn the dances of that. And Filipino was my second grade style, and really appreciated being able to learn Maglalatik and Dinigling and Bandango sa Ilaw. And then hip hop, I guess once America's Best Dance Crew happened, I went to school in Fordham. Alvin Ailey, I was not in that program, but adjacent to that, and then took classes, luckily enough, New York, birthplace of hip hop. Was able to train in places like Broadway Dance Center and things like that. And then found myself in the same navigating dance as a hobby versus as a career. And for me, I probably represent on this panel the person who has continued to straddle the line between the two. I went to grad school, Columbia Organizational Psychology, went through being the container of my parents' hopes and dreams, achieving academically, continued to work, still continued to have the same full-time job that I did when I opened House of Movement back in 2013. So definitely understand also this embodiment of perfectionism, of having a studio and a full-time job and a community and feeling like all of that is still not enough for whatever external validations of success there might be, whether it be from your parents or from your peers or from society. So want to acknowledge that as well as we move in the conversation. But yeah, am very appreciative of this kind of space that I think now we're normalizing these types of conversations that we can bring our whole selves and acknowledge that we are more than yeah, we're more than just a dancer or just AAPI. So as we dive into it, hopefully you'll see us as full multidimensional beings having this shared conversation together. So we're gonna dive right in. The format, these are the meaty, juicy topics, and then I'll say the question, and then whoever wants to answer it, they can answer. So, Pavan, if you don't want to answer it first, you don't have to. Yeah. So for our first one, what unique challenges did you or do you face as an AAPI person in the arts, both within and outside of the AAPI community? What challenges came from the dance industry itself, and how have you overcome, or maybe are navigating how to overcome that challenge?
I think the first one, as an AAPI person, is also like we talked about, Pauline, myself, Paul, of like, and Pavan about like, and Minnie about our, everyone, sorry. I was just like going down the line, it's like everyone said it, everyone said it, everyone said it. Like talking about how to be, making our parents proud and like wanting to be accomplished in something that we love to do that wasn't the like normal thing in our cultures to do, like being a doctor, being a nurse, being an engineer, and all that stuff. So I think that comes in itself a lot of challenges growing up, because you fight this battle with yourself of like, should I pursue it even though it's a passion, even though it may not give me monetary, accomplishments, or do I do it because I can't see myself doing anything else? So I think that was one of the hardest things to overcome, just for me personally. And I think I have like a personal thing in the industry that I've dealt with recently, actually. I was given an opportunity to audition for a role, and it was like an acting role, which I don't really like doing, but I was like, might as well. And the role was for a sushi chef. And I looked at it and I was like, this is weird. Why would they send this to me? And I'm like, I'm not Japanese. And like also sushi chefs train so much in their life to be what they are. And I'm like, this is weird. So I sent it to my agents and I was like, I don't feel comfortable even going to this audition, and I don't think that you should be sending this out to me, like, personally. And they were like so supportive about that. We understand, we know like this isn't like right. And I think slowly more companies are understanding that like we're all not like one thing. When they say Asian, they all like try to put us into like one grouping, and it's usually just like Japanese or Chinese, and like Filipinos haven't also just slowly started rising in like the arts and being known for being Filipino. And like I think that in itself is hard, to find things that are like good for you in the industry. And then another personal thing that was kind of like weird for me, I was on a job and we were at rehearsal, and it was for a K-pop show, and the main choreographer is white, and everyone in rehearsal is Asian. And there's a transition where we have to run around just to move, and our arms were tucked in like this, so like running like this. And she goes, I think you guys should move your arm over your face. And I already knew what she was gonna say, and I was like, this is already bad. And she was like, I want you to run like ninjas. And at that point, I like don't know if she thought about it and like regretted saying it, but I was just like, you're in a room full of Asians, and that does not the process in your brain that like you said something like that. So I think what am I trying to say? Like the caricatures, or like the things that people go to, it's hard for them, or hard for us to like feel in those spaces where should you say something? Should it be something that you need to speak up about? And I think more so now I'm trying to like find those things and say like, hey, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that things. And yeah, I think for me, those have been like personal challenges that I faced.
Hi everyone, it's me again. So I think a challenge that is faced within arts and entertainment is visibility for Asian people in general. I think a lot of times now, again, as an adult, I just have much more expectation of what I want to see. So like when I go to the movies and you don't see any Asian people, I get upset by that. Or if the only Asian person you see is like subservient or is a stereotype of what an Asian person is expected to be, that is an issue. And I think that's why I am a dancer, because I want to make sure that people like me are seen. I think that, I think I'm the only person that does more contemporary work in this, but like when you go see a company like Paul Taylor or Martha Graham, it's usually white. And I dance for a company that's well known. It's called Battery Dance. It's in the same line as those companies. But I think it's important that, when you see what the issue is, how can you be a part of the solution? So for me, it's like, I want to be that person that's seen so that other people can know that they too can be an artist. And I think I did list that I was listed as one of the hottest men by the Huffington Post, and that's not a superficial thing. I wanted to list that specifically because I was the only Asian person listed on that. And it wasn't like something I was hidden in the background, but I was among these people that are always celebrated. And it's like, it's important for us to be celebrated as leads. I will share one specific story, similar to what Bo said about speaking out. Within my own company, we had a Romanian choreographer set work on us. And my company, aside from me, is all white, and there's one black person. And that black person actually left the rehearsal process because he didn't feel like he was seen by the choreographer. So I wanted to give her a chance, and I sat there for about 3 weeks, and she literally had me sit in the back of the room while everybody else was given material. And of course, me being Rachel Berry, I was like studying everybody's role and just like being useful even though I wasn't being used. And she finally said, Vive, okay, stand up. And I said, okay. And then she literally gave me like 2 A counts in unison with everybody else and then set me off stage. I immediately wrote to my director that this was a form of racism. I felt like she, whether it was conscious or not, it was very subversive racism. The fact that I was the only Asian person not being used, not being utilized, and then the one time I was hidden behind my white counterparts. I think it's important for us to be that change or speak out on how it should be changed. But I'm thankful that I did speak to my director about it, and he had a lot of empathy. He cried for me, and he made sure that I was seen. I'm actually like the poster for our company, so I feel like I'm proud that I spoke that to him, and he wanted to acknowledge that my visibility matters.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar thing that we all could experience. To me, it was like either you are the Asian in the group or the project, or you're a body. It's like if somebody needs their project, they're like, we want an Asian. Oh, let's hit up Minnie, versus like, I just want a dancer. Like for like there was a couple cases where I felt like that, which I didn't mind. I don't mind to be your Asian. It's not, being Asian is a proud thing for me. Like, and it's not, people didn't have like bad intentions or anything. I didn't feel like I was marginalized. To me, it was just like, it's just a sign to me that like my body or my look doesn't just naturally, you wouldn't think of me or my look or how I move as like with the rest of the people that that are not Asians. Like to me, that was like, that made me a little bit of confused as to like what do I want in the commercial industry, which is what I'm exposed to more. To me, it was like, do I see myself in these music videos, on these stages? To be honest, no, because my bodies don't look like that. My skin doesn't look like that. I don't see myself or people that look like me being represented in these videos unless you are the Asian. Which is, there are a lot of Asian dancers out here like that are super talented, but not everybody gets a chance to, be this one person that's being showcased in people's work. And it's ironic because I actually did a show back home, and it's like a mix of like a lot of like different like Chinese singers, and some of them are trained in like in the K-pop industry, and the artists that can dance the best, they used only non-Asian dancers. That it was back home in China. They specifically didn't want Asian faces because they think international faces made them look more international. So you have like, you know, the other artists that are not Asian, non-Asian artists not trying to use Asian, and your Asian artists also don't want to use Asians because they want to look more international. So to me, that's like such an awkward place for us to be in, and it's like, who is representing us, you know? Because it's like a black, like Megan Stillion's gonna hire dancers that look like her, Lizzo's gonna hire dancers that look like her. Who's this Asian artist that's gonna hire dancers that look like them? You know, so that's kind of like my personal question in terms of like where I see myself. You know, obviously I do, this is not just the only thing I'm like doing, because even when I started dancing, I was never like, I watched this music video, it made me want to dance. No, I wanted to dance because I wanted to battle. Because I was like, I wanted to be like, you know, in the streets, funny enough. But yeah, so I would say, I'm still, listen, when I get back to the games, I'm gonna like battle the B-boys. But yeah, so that's just one thing that just came up on my journey, is that I kind of like took a different direction because I don't see my place, you know, just like visually or yeah, in certain spaces.
You don't look like an Indian. That's what I heard for years when I first started. And when I started, Pauline was 2, so. There wasn't a lot of Asians or Indians in the game. I can only remember 1, maybe 2 others, and 1 left to go to India because his skills were not being recognized here. He was constantly being asked to look a certain way, and he was actually half Caucasian, so he could have passed either way. And he changed his name to an Americanized version, and I was always told, that's why whenever you see my name, I always put Pavan Thimmaiah, because I don't want anyone taking my name and making it simple because you are too lazy to understand how to speak it. So, the challenges I faced earlier that I see now and I see reflected in all of our stories has not unfortunately changed as much in 20 years. It's only disguised itself better. You know, you like, let's do the ninja run, you know, like that. Back then they would be like, oh, you know, let's make the Indian guy do it then, or let's make the Asian, they would be more upfront about it. So you can really see it right away. So, you know, that to me is still prevalent. Because I can remember, I had an agency at one point, and all they would send me out on was jobs for Indian people, like a fucking cab driver, or work in a deli, or you could speak like this, you know, all that shit. And I always used to tell them, I was like, that's not what I do. Like, I'm Indian, and I'm very proud of that, but I'm not going on this job because you need an Indian person. Now, if this Indian person's a badass superhero dancing dude, okay, maybe I'll do that. But if it's not going to represent us to the way other races are represented, mainly Caucasian white people are represented in the mainstream, then I don't want any part of it. So I left the agency. And that's why I have this space, because here I can create my own opportunity. I have my own platform. If I want to dance with people who look all different, we're going to look all different, and it's going to be amazing. Because we're all contributing something unique to that project. We're not just conforming and being thrown away when we're no longer useful. So that, I feel like, was my experience early on. It continues to be the experience of AAPI people. The other side of it was, I wasn't very accepted in the Indian community either. Because I can tell you that, you know, I never dated an Indian woman outside of college. Now, I have a beautiful wife, and she's gorgeous, and she's over there. I just want to point that out right now. But before I even knew who she was, no one would touch me because I was a dancer, and they wanted that. They didn't want that stereotype. My parents, as much as I loved them, fought long and hard. And you said you did it because you wanted your parents' approval. I wanted to piss them off. I did. Anytime they're like, Paul, you can't do that. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it twice as hard now. And that's how she knows. She came here and had a similar situation, and I was like, I'm just gonna push harder. Because you know why? It's their fault. Because when I came home with a 99, they were like, where's that extra point?
Yeah.
Right? So now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna push harder then. You're gonna inspire me to work harder and make you mad? Okay, I'm gonna do that. And then that's what happened. So like even then, the Indian community wasn't exactly accepting what I was doing. They weren't coming to shows and buying tickets, and they only started paying attention when it was like 15 years later. And like, oh wow, I think I was watching TV the other day, and I think you were on it. I was like, yeah, that's right. Thanks for the support. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like as a community, we have to do a better job of recognizing that struggle that we all described, and then we need to come together and be like, listen. They're trying to do something positive. They're not going out there and this is their calling. Like, there's lots of things that we all can do, but there's only one thing that brings us joy, right? Going up there, teaching, dancing, performing, inspiring people. So I feel like the problem was twofold, that there wasn't a lot of representation, that Indians themselves contributed to that problem by themselves not allowing for representation or welcoming it or celebrating it. And then, at the end of the day, they were conforming to a construct that is the white American or white European construct, which goes back to colonialism, which will be for another topic on the other. But
Hey, for me, I was honestly hearing everyone's answers got me really thinking, because I think I'm in a weird spot right now where I can be considered ambiguous. My Filipino background and Filipino history is just a hot mess. And so people just kind of end up looking however the hell their lineage let them. And so I guess going from the beginning, coming from the community and not necessarily having any knowledge of the industry, I think a lot of people in the industry have a certain kind of, not expectation, but have a certain idea of how people from the community dance like. Or like, oh, these people are just community people, like they don't really have anything, they're not aspiring for anything else within the industry. And so I feel like I do remember feeling a certain way. Like I remember I auditioned for Candace Brown's show, I think it was in 2019 for the Soul Spot. And I remember walking into that room and seeing just like 4 Asian people, right? And then especially coming from the community still at that point, like I wasn't trying to be in the industry at all. I think me getting into the cast and the roster was just like people like, who the hell is this girl, right? And being also the only Asian person to be in the cast. Thank God, everyone in that team was just there was no signs of like separation, or like there was really no question of like, oh, she's probably the only Asian girl here, like maybe there's a reason for that, or whatnot. But because of that, not insecurity necessarily, where people might expect a certain way about me because I am coming from the community, I think the forefront of my training was always thinking, I just gotta dance my fucking ass off and let the dancing do the talking. To the point that they can't label me. I was like, we need an Asian girl, so let's get Pauline, right? So something that Minnie would always talk about, like, oh, we need an Asian girl, let's get Minnie. No, like you're gonna want me because I dance better than whoever the hell is there, and I think that was always in the forefront of my mind. And I think now that I'm more so in the industry than I am in the community, that's just the trajectory of my dancing and my career. A big goal of mine is to change the perspective on how people see Asian dancers, especially the ones coming from the community, because I do think there's like a docileness and like some sort of personality that people expect when they see an Asian person, especially someone who looks more East Asian, right? Or even Indian. Like I know there's like a certain personality that people expect from those people, and it's so far from what they think. Like these people are fully human beings with full personalities, and I think a lot of people expect some sort of shyness or like a quietness or something of that sort. And so a goal of mine is to just, when I'm teaching, I want I'm not going to use me being Asian as the forefront, but I'm not going to let them forget that I am Filipino. Because I think because of the ambiguity, that's not really something that they think of. And I think within the industry, there are a few, there actually are a good amount of Filipino dancers and instructors, especially in the West Coast. But I don't think enough of them talk about how Filipino they are, or just any background they are, like whatever sort of Asian you are. And I think maybe there's some sort of, let me not talk about that side of me because it sounds too racially connected, or I don't want this to be a racial thing, or like I don't want that to form some sort of opinion about me. And so I think that's definitely something that I want to talk about more. That even though I am an instructor and it's not, my race isn't a forefront that I want my dance and my art to embody, don't forget that I am also this person. And I don't want to be shy of, because I think when I was younger, and I think a lot of people, when you're younger, that's, especially for Asians, that's not really something that you kind of show off, like, hey, I'm Asian, you know what I mean? Or like, I'm Filipino, and this is where I'm from, and this is where my parents are, and like what they went through. And I think the same thing with Vive, where the proudness comes at a later age. And I hope that a lot of people, especially now in the community where people are just getting younger and younger, there's like 15, 14-year-olds are starting to train, and I think that wasn't really the thing back then within the community. I hope everyone's a little bit more proud and talking about where they're coming from, and not being so shy, being like, oh my gosh, I don't want them to think I'm like this nerdy little Asian kid, or that I don't really belong here because everyone's white or black or Hispanic, and I'm the only Asian person here, so I gotta shut up. But yeah, and I mean, personally too, like I've definitely gone through my fair share of like, oh, you're Filipino, but you're kind of light skinned right now because it's winter time. Can you put on this costume and just fit in with everyone else? And I think something that we all have to keep in mind is that you can say something. You know what I mean? Like if you lose this job, so what? These people probably only pay $200. You can let the $200 go, keep your dignity and your integrity, pay you in likes, yeah. And I think it's understandable. The younger Pauline probably was a little scared to say something because who am I? But it's definitely just speaking up in general and talking about who you are and where you're coming from is just something that I want to instill in me even today and as I get older. Because it's very important, especially on a social media setting. I think if you're a little bit more outspoken when it comes to that thing, it's a little bit more, it normalizes it a little bit and makes it cool. You know what I mean? Like once you make something cool, that's when things really change. Sadly, it's real so sad, but yeah, that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Definitely, just quick 2 cents. Definitely resonate with everything that everyone is saying. And I think to Pauline, similar to me, Philippines, there's a lot of colonization. There's a lot of mixedness that you can be Filipino, multi-generational, but then still Pauline, Bo, and I look very different. And no. And yeah, I think for me, just the add maybe for the mixed perspective is that I say that Filipino, Filipinx, American, because growing up, I grew up in Queens, and one, it was very diverse and nobody asked you what your race was, and then you become more and more racialized as you move into predominantly white spaces. So that in itself was new, but the passing, this idea of like ambiguity, that there's a lot of privilege in not having to say, or being racialized in different ways. Being racialized by usually the proximity of what the person is. Like if I walk into a Latinx space, I become part of that group. Or if I walk into, any other type of space, there's the proximity of that, but also not just, I think, falling into the invisibility of it and actually speaking of your truth and where, honoring your lineage. And then to what Pavan is saying, I think I am not somebody who went into the industry. I'm somebody who stayed in the community. But I think the thing that I loved about it is that we're able to create those spaces. If we don't see studios or spaces like that, like before House of Movement, I didn't really see anything in the East. My dance experience was through BDC, and it was very cutthroat, at least at the time when I was there, and I was just taking it after my junior year of college, just like watching ABDC, going into beginner class, and then seeing this whole culture that I didn't understand and nobody told me. There wasn't anyone, mentorship or anything like that, and not wanting to experience that for myself. And then I think that's the role of each generation. You make that hill a little less harder to climb for the people who move, after you. And I love hearing that there are 14-year-olds who are getting into the community and also thinking about seeing maybe Pauline's face in the industry and thinking I can be her, I can be like Vive, I can be in a contemporary dance company as well. So yeah, just wanting to speak up for that visibility, and also for, I don't know, maybe Pavan feels this is probably like off topic, but there is this machismo culture, at least in Filipino culture, where like, oh, dancing is something you can do for fun at a party, but if you get too into it, it's emasculating to be a male dancer. So part of that, like speaking it and introducing people, and this is, part of that is changing that narrative as well, especially for our parents, and changing some generational stories around what it means, or what type of body or what type of person is allowed to be a dancer. So yes. Thank you for everyone sharing theirs. That was just the first question, so who knows what's to come. I think, leaning into this idea of challenges that we might have faced and identity, how do you navigate your AAPI identity in an art form that is not necessarily centered or rooted in AAPI lineage? And how have you overcome the challenges that come from holding on to your identity and at the same time conforming and or respecting the art forms that we work within?
So I've worked in primarily commercial and hip hop street dance styles. And the first thing I feel like is that you have to recognize that you are dancing a style that is of another culture. Although, I feel very identify most with it, and it's been the most welcoming to me, it's still not mine, right? It's that of the community. So every action and every reaction has to be for the community. You have to contribute to the story and not take from it and do your own thing with it. And that has always been the approach that I wanted to take, because I wouldn't like it when I see something from my culture being taken and trodden upon, right? And that includes things like, which is something I get a lot, is that, oh, you're like the good brown, like the brown that's like, oh, you can, you don't look a certain way, or you don't act a certain way, you don't speak a certain way, and that's offensive. And I would immediately shoot that down and be like, well then, you can go find the bad brown you're talking about is the one that actually made this up. So go talk to them and go find them, and they'll be your best answer. And if you can't do that, then you don't deserve to even do whatever it is that you're asking to do. So I feel like on that level, that's the best way to do it, because we can ask, there's always going to be a fight for respect and a fight for recognition when you're in another culture's art form. But I think you have to recognize that that is because that culture has been subjugated to generations and generations of being put down and kept down and being appropriated and all these things. So at the end of the day, we're actually, although the cultures are different, the history is very similar. And the recognition that that history is similar brings you closer together. And that's what I felt. Like, I feel now that no one ever questions like why I'm in a thing or doing a thing or why, and no one does. Like, we have sessions here on Friday night where everybody's all different races and everybody loves each other. It's just all about the community. And as long as it stays about that, we recognize that, and we give credit to where credit is due, I feel like that's for me, at least from my experiences, the way to meet those challenges that we face when we have to go into those things.
I think it largely depends on what community you're into. I think the competition community world is different from the commercial world, which is different from the underground, like more of the cultural side, which is again what drawn to me to New York, and that was also like the most open environment ever. Like I remember going to before like EXPG was a studio, before like all these like people were teaching, the only place that you could learn live feed, which is a new thing in the community at the time, is to go to teen nights in Harlem, in this like settlement center where all these teenagers would meet up every week, and all of them are black, okay? And it would just be me and my friend, the two, like, not even just Asian, no, we're not even Americans, you know, like these two visitors basically jumping their session. No one would ask, like, are you Japanese? Or try to speak Chinese to us. They're just like, you know, like, how do I describe it? It's like, I feel like the street, the underground scene always had this openness, like, and even in the clubs, like people would approach me because they see me like dancing, but these will be people, the club heads that want to like tell me something about the environment. They might be curious, but they're trying to educate me in a way. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, without putting me in a place where I felt like, I know it's weird, I just felt included. And like, yeah, like to the simplest way to describe it, I felt included. I think that also has something to do with people being aware that a lot of international, like Asian dancers are visiting New York to study the culture, to learn the culture, and a lot of people were like spend a lot of years overseas spreading, like teaching us the cultures overseas. So I feel like that connection was understood, and one of the things that was appealing for me, for in terms of like the hip hop culture, is the welcoming, like the freedom. I feel like a lot of us chose to do this because in our own culture or in our personal experience, like we felt like we were suppressed, like in some aspect, and like dance is what made us free. Like hip hop, not as in the dance, because hip hop is a culture. Hip hop includes so many things and so many spaces. Is what help us be free, you know. So I feel like. What was this question again? I feel like I'm like.
You're answering it. You're doing a good job.
Okay, great. So I think I never had an issue with my identity in that world. Commercial world is a different story. You are boxed in easily, and it's a lot less about skills, more about looks. We were taught that, you know, from the jump. All your mentors will tell you. A lot of times, it's not about how you dance. It's about the looks. You know, it's about your type. It's about so many other things. And again, like going back to the lack of representation, it's a lot harder for us to get into a certain opportunities just because our looks don't fit in. You know, there's no need for our looks specifically. That's why we have spaces where we do our own things. And I think that's like a common thing that amongst like a lot of the like Asian artists is that we started something of our own, that we are in control, that we can build. We don't have to wait to be called. We don't have to wait to be given an opportunity. And I think to me, that definitely like brought me out of certain spaces because I like to be in control. I like to be in control of how I make my money, where I spend my money. I want to be in control of the lifestyle I live. I don't want to wait till wait for the call for the next gig, because what's after the next gig? Waiting for another call. Like I was like, that's not the life I want to live. Even though I love dance, I love arts. Did I have to be, you know, did it have to be that way, or I have to do another job? You know, I think at one point that's like all of the questions, not just for like Asian dancers, for everybody, but I think particularly us when we already don't have, like again, what the styles that we're dancing in, it's from like a different culture, and for the people that are from that culture, I feel like their families, their support system is different. Their families understand because they're like, oh, it's like if I go on and do Chinese dance, I'll hear a lot less questions, you know, because it's like it's not a new thing that just doesn't sound like it's reliable, you know. So I feel like, yeah, I'm just all over the place. Okay.
That was great, Minnie. So I'm a little confused by the question too, so I'll answer it in the way that I think relates to my story. What I want to share is that I hope that people, artists specifically, realize that they can empower themselves, whether you're Asian, you're gay, whatever you identify with. Like, I think to own it, to own your uniqueness, to own your individuality, and I feel like that is part of the key to being not accepted, but being seen. So I think when I first started dancing when I was 19, and that's when YouTube came out. I'm 35. And I posted, a video of myself and gay Asian boy dancing, finding dance for the first time. But that video actually got like 10,000 views within a week. And then from that video, people would fly me out all over the world to teach. So I think for me, I felt very empowered at a young age and really early on in my dance career that I made sure that my unique voice, my identity was always like this statement that you knew who I was. I never felt like I had to conform or look like anybody else. Like even now, if you know what I teach something called contemporary flow, which I've never even heard of prior to myself. I developed this style based on my background, my personality, my studies in Qigong, in Buddhism, and in movement, and so it's like I created my craft based on myself, and that's what I want people to remember as an artist, that you don't have to box yourself into a certain style, into a certain genre, and just to remember the idea of what an artist is to work on this craft that you've been expressing on your own, but to the world, finding your own voice and sharing that voice. I'm not sure what that question was asking, but I definitely want to leave with that. That empower yourself, artists.
Period. Oh God. Questions. So I guess I'll go with just the spaces that you'll find me in and where I put myself in, and that's definitely like the teaching spaces and like the industry, like me as a body and as a dancer. And then there's another space where where it's I'm the creator, right? Like I am the artist and I'm the main character. In terms of the teaching spaces, something that my style, it's a fusion, and so a lot of people like to ask me, what style is this? Like, oh my God, is this dance hall? Is this afro? Is this house? Is this hip hop? And it's usually the question of, is this hip hop? Like, what is this hip hop choreography? And I was like, baby, no. It's a fusion of many different styles that I've found myself enthralled with, found myself training in, and I'm not necessarily a master in one style, but it's just a combobulation of all these styles created my own style, and that's what I like to teach. And so I think the message behind that is just for something that teachers just really have to do, and I think it's happening more recently than ever, is that being transparent with what the hell you're teaching, right? Like, don't label your class as a hip hop class when it's not really a hip hop class, right? Or and it doesn't even matter levels and whatnot. It's really just the style of it, because I think maybe like 5, maybe even 3, 4, 5 years ago, every class that is not contemporary, that's not ballet, that's not jazz, was called hip hop, right? And until the whole movement within the dance community, and I would say like it was like maybe 2018, 2019, where even the word urban dance was canceled, and for good reasons. Like, what the hell the fuck is an urban dance, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so it's nice that nowadays I think people are way more aware or conscious necessarily. It's really more so the consciousness of like, okay, let me label my class appropriately. And so it's either the teacher that's labeling it or the studio labeling it, right? And I think before, I think a lot of teachers were scared of telling the studio, hey, can you not label my class this? And so there's definitely way more freedom to do that, and people again are more conscious about what to name their classes. When it comes to me as a dancer, I resonate a lot with what Vive said, is that at the end of the day, like I think everyone should just try and train to be as best as they can be. And so to fit in doesn't even exist, right? Like, you become whatever the hell they need. And that's all based on skill. hopefully. Like that's, the idealistic world that we're trying to get into. But, and then going into the creator realm, it's just, so I always tell a lot of, because I think in the industry, if you're training to become a professional dancer, there's this route that a lot of people think is necessary, and it's like, I have to go to all these open calls, I have to train at BDC, I have to go to open calls and just be noticed by every choreographer that exists. That's great, right? And I think that's attested and it's been proven that it does work. But at this day and age where things, you could fully just have something on the computer and make something out of it. There's so many realms in dance that have opened and are still yet to open. And people like Keone and Mari, I always talk about them, but those two really made something possible. And I don't think they even realized that it could be possible. And those two people are kind of they have a look that no one really would look for. Like I would say, like they're not the traditionally expected professional dancer dancing behind a big artist, even though they had the amazing skills and to back it up. But in terms of looks, that's just not where they were. And for them to find a lane for themselves and open lanes for dancers that want to do the same thing and carrying these people all around the world with them and helping those people open new lanes for themselves, I think there's nothing better than doing that. Versus kind of, and if you want to, and I always tell people this too, especially younger dancers, like if you want to go with the regular route of the open calls and the training, that is amazing. But like Vive said, not to forget that you have your own agency to do whatever the hell you want, right? And even with the world of Instagram, you could be anything. You could be a dancer / a mukbang / you could literally be anything, and you don't have to just be a dancer. You could be the creator, you could be the videographer, you could be all of that in one. Which we have to sometimes, just be good at it, But yeah, create your lane. If you're funny, even that is one thing that could create a lane for yourself. So, and I hope that, again, a lot of these dancers, especially the young ones, understand that. And it's not just TikTok either, like there's many more. Even that is an avenue itself, right? That no one found, that no one knew. So, yeah.
Agree with everyone. I feel like, what everyone has said is like something I also believe in. And I think for me personally, when I first started teaching in the city, that was one thing that Pauline mentioned about, it was like labeling your class, because I also do not teach hip hop. And if you've taken my class before, if you know what my style is, it's a fusion of things that I've learned, throughout my dance training and my dance journey. And like, I think coming into the city and being a teacher in the city, I knew for a fact that I could not label my class that, because I'm also in the birthplace of hip hop. For me, an Asian boy teaching a hip hop class in the studio where OGs also teach was like, I could never let that happen. And I had a slot right after Sekou at Perry before the pandemic, and I was like, oh my god, he's gonna come into this class and he's gonna be like, what the fuck is this kid doing? But luckily it didn't happen, and he came up to me after my class and was like, you're teaching really, really well, and what you're doing is really, really good, so keep it up. And I was like, oh my god, thank you, thank the Lord. But yeah, I think just like creating your own avenue for what you have to do and what your work is for you and not for anybody else is like a big thing for me. And like, I am, a founder and creator of my own company, and the people that I work with are people who also work in the community, and I want to have a platform for them so that they can also be seen. Like, we are all fortunate enough to have our own things that have led us to where we are as leaders, and I think sometimes there's not an avenue for people who, for the masses of like what we look like for that. And so I want to pave that way for, people who have come from the community, but honestly don't want to like go through the traditional route of like getting signed, going an open call, but still want to dance and are also very talented. And I think that's the thing where like, there's like Minnie talked about, there are different cultures and like different sections of dance within New York. You have your industry, you have your community, you have your underground, and like, I feel like sometimes if you're in one of them, you're perceived a certain way, and I don't want that to happen because dance is universal, and I think you're a dancer, you should be welcomed in everything, and I think the company that I'm doing is like, I want that to be seen in a bigger scale where industry dancers and underground dancers see us and they're like, wow, they're really good, and they're just dancing, and it's not just, oh, because they're Asian, so yeah, I think that's it. I'm done.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I would just add that I think the summing up a lot of the common themes is one, if you are a person who's holding a space or creating a lane, to be open to learning and unlearning, because a lot has changed over the past decade and multiple decades that we collectively represent here. And I think the other piece is this theme of owning your story, that we are people who have been influenced by multiple different styles that we grew up in, styles that are within our lineage, styles that are not, and just honoring that we are a culmination of all of those things. And for me personally, I'm on a journey of remembering what styles are within my lineage. And for me, that is looking into indigenous Filipino styles and styles that are influenced by colonization too, from Spain and all of those things, and kind of doing a self-study in that way. So for me, that means that the steps that I do is not posted because I'm still learning. And I want to also honor that is something, whether you're in the industry, there can be dance that's for you, and then there can be dance that's for a gig. And yeah, those could be two totally different things, and that's fine. Yeah, so there's that. And then diving into the last of our meaty questions, each of us holds a multitude of identities, and AAPI is one that we all share here on this panel. How can we improve things within the intersections of our communities? For example, LGBTQ+, women, socioeconomic status, multiracial identities, etc.
I'll keep it quick. I've always, in this last 2 years, I've really seen it, but I've seen it along the way. While we feel the pain of our own plights, and sometimes those plights are very specific. For example, it's to Asian men, or it's to so-and-so. The pain that you feel in that plight is felt by a lot of people. And if you can teach people, especially children, to dehumanize someone in any way, even a small way, you are doing a disservice to yourself. And I'll tell you a quick story. I had a conversation years ago with someone about the movie Exodus. Does anyone know the movie Exodus? Okay. The movie Exodus, quickly, was a movie that was based in Egypt, but it was like all white people cast in the movie, right? And it was a huge thing. And I remember my friends, who I love, but they are Asian American, and they were saying like, well, that's what brings the money in. What's the big deal? Da da da. And I was like, you know what's going to happen, right? Like, you don't see yourself in these movies. And one day they're going to bring a movie out that's supposed to star an Asian person, and it'll be like Tom Hanks starring in the role. And guess what? This started happening, right? Like, you started seeing it right after that. You're like, oh wow, there's Ghost in the Machine, and what's Scarlett Johansson doing in this movie? Like, so you're like, and they're like, oh, and that's what you have to understand. Like, if you have hatred or a unacceptance, I'm going to call it, towards LGBTQ plus, or you think that anybody is a little, there's something wrong with the way they live their life, the choices that they make to make themselves happy and the people around them happy, you are doing disservice not only to them, you're doing not only disservice to your own humanity, but you are damaging your own culture, because you're teaching that behavior to somebody else, and in turn that's going to make someone else feel hate. That's going to make someone else feel not accepted. So I feel we are very good at like pointing out, well, when this white person did this to me and this person, but we do it to ourselves a lot, and we don't recognize that. And I think this change always starts with yourself. Man in the mirror, Michael Jackson, right? So you got to always look at yourself first if you want change to happen. There you go.
I feel like in terms of communities, I think two things are important. Obviously, unity. Like we need to think supporting each other. It is supporting each other's work, and I feel like how do I? This is like there's a fine line I'm trying to not cross here. Because okay, I was from there's a Chinese community, a Chinese international students community, and there are people who graduated school and just like sticked around, got a job or whatever. And there are a lot of Chinese studios, whether they have a location or they just rent out spaces at Ripley. They run their own classes, and their teachers don't even teach their own choreography. They teach like stuff from the video. They charge a lot of money, but there are people that would only want to go to those spaces because they feel safe, because they feel like they could speak their language, because they feel like they are treated how they were used to, in their environment. I feel like that kind of represents a lot of why I feel like Asians like to stay within their own community. Even I recently had a conversation with somebody who's more familiar with and she's a black girl, in the competition world. She's like, I belong to a team, and then where there were a lot of Asians, and then at dinner, they would just randomly start speaking Chinese, and she was feeling left out, and it's a hip hop team. So that's, to me, it's complicated because this is also a safe space for the Asian dancers. They wanted to be in this community to have a sense of familiarity, but at the same time, it is New York, it is America. We are a huge melting pot, and a lot of people come from different backgrounds, and I think. We all, when we get into the same spaces, we make a choice, right? There's something about that space that's attracting us, whether it's dance, whether it's like how it feels like, or some type of energy, or just on that day you decided to walk in this room to do this thing. I think we need to hold ourselves strong. We need to not lose ourselves. At the same time, we need to be open-minded as well, because I think a lot of times it's like two sides of the coin. If you focus too much on what you want and who you are, sometimes you have to turn certain things away for you to protect that. And I feel like that's very delicate. I feel like all of us living here is navigating that constantly, whether in dance or in the world. Like because at the end of the day, you want to like stay true to who you are, but at the same time, you want to be embraced also, and you want to, because otherwise there's a miscommunication. What somebody might feel next to you when you think you're just being who you are, it could be not such a positive thing. So I think just awareness. I think it's at the end of the day what's important. Continue learning about yourselves as well as what other people go through, what certain things means to them. Especially in like today's world, we're all going through a lot internally, mentally. We're learning a lot of information all the time, and a lot of things could be triggering to some, but not to others, depending on what we're going through all the time. So I think, just compassion and awareness, so that we are together. We can recognize the differences without, losing the unity. Does that make sense?
Ooh, yeah. Are we still going?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, go.
I actually gotta go soon because I gotta teach, but so I got you next after. One thing I would say is I like to do this thing, and I haven't done it often enough, but I like to, whenever a young dance team from the community comes to my class and is like, oh my gosh, like I love taking your class, but it's just so expansive. I like to offer where, especially if they're coming from a team, like something like Style Legacy, or if you guys are familiar with them, Project Spark, and they usually form these dance teams from their own schools, or it's like just a bunch of teenagers, or they're coming from different schools and they kind of meet at one place and whatnot. Trying to offer just free training sessions or just a moment where it's like I can teach them something, you know. And I think I think this is because I resonate a lot with not really having money to do what I love and to learn new things, especially with dance and in the arts, that if we can offer, if artists, especially credible artists, could offer a moment of their time to just teach younger upcoming artists, like they probably don't even know if it's something they want to do, but to even have a moment like that, I think would be great. Because I think a lot of, you know, everyone struggles with money. Like that's always something that we think about, even as artists, it's like, oh my God, but I think something that could be so fulfilling and something so satisfying is to be able to share dance in its purest form and for no financial exchange, you know? And then another thing would be, oh my gosh, I forgot my other point. People need to stop leaving New York. That was my number one point. It's like, especially in the industry where, I guess in the more industry routed classes, a lot of amazing dancers, creators, and teachers always end up leaving New York for LA. And I fully understand. And you know, and kudos to them for chasing the dream in Hollywood and whatnot. Because I understand like all these jobs are there, but it makes me really sad when people who are so great at their craft and can offer so much to the communities here just fully uprooting and leaving and not really coming back. And I think it's really coming from the principle of whatever fed you, at least feed it back. You know, like, and it doesn't have to be a constant thing, but just come home and teach whatever you may have learned, because there are so many resources in New York, and no matter what, there's always gonna be resources, but we can't keep on restarting with quality. Like the quality gets to 100% here, and then they uproot and leave, and so we kind of end up starting at 40 again. And so the growth, I think that's why there's also phases in New York where the dancing is so amazing and the teachers are amazing, and then out of nowhere a 5-year bald spot of just nothing, and then it comes back again. Like it's a really strong community, and then it happens again where no one's left. So I think it really goes back to the conversation of making your own lane, so you don't have to feel the pressure of, oh God, I gotta leave to go to LA and then do something there. You know, if artists in general, especially in movement artistry, if we could all just find a way to feed our communities here, we won't have to rely on LA and the Hollywood scene and that, because at the end of the day, they don't really care about feeding us. So if we could just do that for our own communities, that would be amazing, and no one has to leave, you know, and we all grow old here, you know, so hopefully people stop moving and then just never coming back. You can move, but just come back, you know, and just guide the new kids, you know, so. Yeah, I gotta go. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh yeah, it's your turn.
That's okay. Don't go anywhere. I just want to go back to what I said before, but just realizing that change doesn't have to be something you just talk about. Change is something that you take action. So I've been in New York City for 10 years, and I think you know, a lot of dancers, you know, they think that they come from a place of lack. There's not enough work out there. I can't afford this. I can't do that. So for me, it's like I keep hearing this, and I've always been somebody of leadership, just taking on like what is the issue and how we can make a difference in it. So for me, I've actually created jobs for dancers, because I think that's like, how do I take this issue and make a solution? So I created Vive for Love Casting, and through Vive for Love Casting, over the 10 years, I've hired over 1,000 dancers. In the past 1 year of the pandemic, I hired over 100 dancers. But it's like, don't wait for change, make change happen. Create work so that people will buy that work. So for me, I'm able to hire dancers because I have work that I put out on social media, because social media is great. And then people, producers, clients, artists buy that work. And so I'm able to hire dancers. So it's like, if you have an idea going through your mind, that is the universe giving you this creative energy to manifest into this physical world. So what I would say is like, if you want to create change, be the change. Make change happen. Don't wait for it. Don't talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it and do it. You know, take action.
Vive for president, everybody. Let's go.
Pauline, we love you.
Let's do it. I love you. Yeah, I feel like everyone has said everything. I was last and just piggybacking off everyone's answers. Let me look at the question again because I feel like improve things within it. Yeah, I think for me personally, I identify as gay, so I always want to try to hire friends who are queer because I feel like sometimes we don't get the representation. Also, within our own community and within the just dance community in general, it's like sometimes if you're identified as queer, you're considered a certain way, or you dance a certain way, you must do heels, you have to dance feminine, and I feel like I want to break that stereotype, not only just within the industry, but also within us culturally, because especially in the Philippines, you know, being gay is like, you're either one or the other. And sometimes I think people perceive gay as you are a drag star, you're a drag queen, and you're feminine, you dress femininely, and you wear dresses and all that stuff, you put makeup on, and I think for me, living here and seeing all the different types of queer and gay men, like, I want to break that stereotype, especially in dance. You know, like, I want us to be able to do everything, you know, and create a space for that, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Hey.
Yeah, I'll just, thanks, Pauline. Yeah, I basically agree with everyone and just would say, especially what Pauline said, giving back to the future generation, and then if you are in a place of leadership or power or able to create jobs, then definitely do that. And then the one other thing I would say is I like to think of it as inviting people into a conversation, because a lot of these topics, it's the first time, especially if it's an intergenerational conversation, it's a big conversation to be had. So thinking, you know, how can I invite, or how can I, you know, share from this identity or this thing that's important to me in a way that's inviting and not necessarily of a place of judgment, because I think the world has gotten also a lot more siloed in the past 4 to 8 years. And, you know, if you think of it as a conversation, then everyone is welcome, everyone has a seat at the table for that. So yeah, there's that. We will be moving on into the Q&A. So if there's either people in the chat who have questions, you can type it in, or if there are people and you want to raise your hand and we can pass the mic to you. Yes. Do you want to come up, or I'll go to you? Or? Yeah. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, cool. Hello, my name is Anel Moya. I am South African and soon to be South African American, hopefully. I came here once and my friends invited me, so I'm really happy to come. One thing that I took a lot from your stories was that now as adults, that you've connected your heritage with this American heritage now. And especially like for your story, I want to know how did you bridge that? Because I think I'm still in the process of, you know, connecting the two. And if I went back home, shame, they'll be like, oh, Anel is American. She is American down to the root, you know? So I definitely want to hear your stories and everybody else's stories of how you connected your heritage roots with what you are or what you are surrounded with now.
Okay.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Really smiling face over there. We love that. I think that it's important for me now at 35 to really own being Lao American, because there is almost no Lao American artists that you hear of. I think that the artists that you do see are mainly, in the mainstream are not Lao American. So for me, it's like I had to step up and say that, oh, I am Lao. And I have to do that everywhere I go now because that is my story. And the more that I create, I want to create meaningful work. So when I'm creating, a show, it has to come from a place of depth. And so I now bring in my family story, the story of the Lao people into the work that I create. So I think it came together all as I became more aware of what I was saying as an artist and how I wanted, not myself, but my people to be seen. So I think it was just empowering my story through that.
I think at the end of the day, it's about who you are. Because my Chinese and Ashley's Chinese could be very different things. And it's not, we don't owe anybody what's the standard, what's the Chinese you think you are getting, I think at the end of the day, it's important, like, what you're taking from your backgrounds or cultures, either it's like, whether a race thing or just simply like a different environment, and what's important to you, what makes you who you are. I think that I feel like could answer, because I kind of know the place that you are talking about is like, because I also always, I had I feel like for a long time I had different worlds. I have the world with my Chinese people, whether it's back home or here, or people, I feel like I was living, not like a double life, but it's different culture. I treat them very differently. The way I talk to people, places, how we hang out versus how we hang out, like very different. How we talk about dance, how we speak, very different. And I think as I get older, I started to integrate myself more, and it started to becoming more and more natural, just like, because I used to kind of ask myself questions like that too, and I feel like sometimes when I'm as like in my dance journey, like learning hip hop or commercial styles and finding different like characters of myself, I'm like, is that a black girl character? No, that's me. That's what I resonate with. Obviously, I was learning from certain culture, or because dance comes from culture. It's how people felt. It comes from who they are. At the same time, like, we're all people, and we're all we have layers. We have, our souls are really rich, and I think dance journey, or life itself, is you finding more layers of you, and I think that will come with time, obviously. Yeah, but just like, I think it's an exploration of who we are, and then we can carry that into everything we do. Doesn't matter it's dance or anything, we do in life in general, or just walking on the street, like, who you are, and you stay connected with that, I think.
I want to make sure we have some other questions, so I want to make sure.
Yeah, we're happy to.
Was that good?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, and is it from the chat?
Yes, we have a comment and we have a question.
Do you want to drink?
Mika, read it.
No, you don't. I'm loud enough. So the first one is a comment that we had at the beginning almost from Kim. I don't know how to pronounce the full name, so I'm so sorry. I don't want to say it wrong. I think people say my name wrong. So they're saying that from Hawaii, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the term "hapa." We were talking at the beginning. The transliteration of the word to English just means half. And they're saying, I think it's important to acknowledge the misappropriation of Hawaiian culture when people spread the misinformation that the word means half Asian, then they mean choose half, no much. So that's just a comment that we got, like, when we just started introducing ourselves. I think it's important to.
Sure, yeah. I'll respond to it, definitely. I'll speak from it. Yes, the interpretation for Habra can be, wait, did that person say that it's half Asian?
Just half.
Oh, half.
Yeah.
I learned it as part from somebody who is Hawaiian. But I'll just say the reason why for me that resonates is because I like the idea, and when I lived there, I like the idea that you don't have to go into a laundry list of all the things that you were a part of. You can, well, even in Hawaii, you don't even have to say, you can say kamaina, which means, a local. And you can just say a word like hapa, and you don't have to explain your ancestry 23 of what you are, and you are accepted. So definitely acknowledge that there are different interpretations, and for me the reason why it resonates is because it is an inclusive term for people who sit in the intersections of multiple identities.
So then we have a question from Mitch. So they're asking, with the AAPI thing that came with COVID, how are you taking care of yourself, mental and or physical health? Around the experiences you shared a while ago of discrimination and injustice as a dancer, what emotions and feelings come up when you do experience those injustice? And what is also your take on mental health with the injustice today?
So this was around the hate crime stuff and during this period of time. So this one's personal because we've experienced quite a bit of it. Her and I were asked to leave we got a note saying you should move from the neighborhood. We've gotten a lot of threats to Asian members of our community, to their directly and to us, saying that we're going to do this to you, we're going to do that to you. It's been very distasteful and honestly illegal. So I think it's important to first understand that the goal of these things are to shake you from who you are as a human being, to break you from your foundation, and to not allow that to happen, right? They feel threatened by your presence, and to react in a way that is also threatening only justifies in their mind, justifies their behavior and perpetuates a cycle of negativity and unproductivity. Conversation is productive, right? So if you respond with just being who you are, standing up for yourself, but doing it in a way that's based in experience and fact and personal, in a personal way, meaning that people respond to you if you speak to them and look in their eyes and talk to them as an individual. Even if they come in with hate, they don't leave with that same amount of hate. So in terms of the mental health part of it, going to spaces where you feel welcome to talk, knowing that you are always welcome to talk to people, knowing where you can go. I know here we are. I think that's pretty well known. We're hosting this thing, so I hope everyone understands that that is a thing that we want to do. We want people to feel welcome, whether it's hate towards Asians or hate towards anybody. You should be able to come in here and feel safe. And part of that is feeling like you are heard, that your feelings are valid, right? So I think the first thing is to validate those feelings and to make sure that once you do that, that you see how much damage has been done and you address that damage as a community, or if you need to professionally get some help. But in terms of letting someone bully you around and all that stuff, these are cowards, all right? These are cowards. Just be, listen. I'm gonna tell you a real quick story, okay? Somebody did that thing when I was a little kid and I was on a bus. Someone pushed me from the back, knocked me in the face, and I had bloody nose and everything. And they said some Indian slur. This was on the bus. My mom, who is 5 foot, maybe 1, and is little, but is fierce, and she came into the bus, stopped in front of the bus, made them stop driving, pulled me back in the bus, and stood there, and while I had the bloody nose and like all that stuff, I was like 7 years old. She came in, she was like, who was the one that pushed my son from the back like a coward? Who did it? I'm standing right here. Who did it? Who's the one that did it? And he's talking to the bus, she's railing the bus driver, like, you're an adult and you allow this to happen? She's just ripping into him. That's courage, right? To stand in front of dozens of people who you know their parents are gonna go, who's this fucking guy, woman yelling at my kids, right? The bus driver's like, who's this parent? But that's courage, right? Like my dad going into a spot where he knew that he was gonna feel racism and just standing. We went to a restaurant when we first came here, and they were completely like, let's just get him out of the room. I stood there and I ate my pizza and I ordered some wine, right? Because I did not want them to know that what they were doing even had an effect, right? I didn't want to validate them. So, hate is hate. It's a base emotion. You shouldn't validate it when it's directed towards you.
Well, I have a mace, and my boyfriend puts a pocket knife in my bag. Okay, so that's yes, heart. Oh well, that's probably for him. But to me, you gotta protect yourself. At like end of the day, because these days there's a lot of hate. There's a lot, not just towards Asians. There's a lot of hate in people's heart, waiting to be directed because of what happened, because of what's going on. The world is in chaos. There's a war, literally, and people are homeless. You know, gas prices are crazy. There's literally so much going on that's triggering people, and there's a lot of energy, negative energy, that's just waiting for an opportunity to get out. So, and we need to be at peace with that's the case. We can't be thinking about, oh, the world is crazy, and we put ourselves down. We're like, the world is scary. To me, the world has always been pretty fucked up for some people, and now it's just all more in our faces, more in this, first world modern society, and we're seeing more of the truth of, like the negative side of the world. And this is when, you have an opportunity to fight, not to fight, not to try to not to get into conflict, but it's in your spirit. This is when we kind of need to wake up from maybe we thought the world is safer. Yeah, it was never safe. It was never safe for a lot of the people in the world. We just don't look at it. We just don't need to look at it. And to me, Asian hate, to me, so I think I feel like there's always, for example, there's one piece of news about somebody. I think it's a story, and the more the story gets repeated, the more we feed into it. Obviously it happens, and it's very, very real. But I don't want to sound all conspiracy, but I think I think there are people that want us to believe certain things. Even when it comes to violence, and again, I think there's a lot of energy waiting to have an excuse to go. And if I think there's bad intentions behind a lot of why these stories are being told. But at the end of the day, I think you have a choice to not let that get to you, but still protect yourself. Do what you gotta do. If you gotta take a karate class just train your alertness, you have to do that. And again, I think to me it's like making a decision to accept it. To do what you need to do and to keep your spirit up. Because the worst part is looking at the news and then thinking how relatable it is. And I think that's when it hurts the most. And then, but what are you gonna do? Are you gonna let that beat you down? Are you gonna let that keep you in a state where you can't flourish? Or are you gonna be a fighter and still continue to live the life that you're supposed to live? So that's my 2 cents.
Yes, Minnie, we love Minnie. I'd like to address the how do you self-care aspect of this question. And I think during the pandemic, it gave us this time to step away from the daily routines that we were used to, like work, seeing the same people, maybe the same routines. And in that time, I found that I'm actually happier not to see certain people. I'm happier not to go to these certain spaces. And I think in reflecting about that and bringing it into the world now that things are open is how do you self-care? It's to consciously choose the things that you want in your life. If there are people that no longer serve you in a healthy way, it's okay to release them. Other things are, how are you mindful about the things that you consume? So for me, I'm very conscious about what I think, the word choices that I use, and how that has vibration. And so I think for me, self-care is about really tuning into the things that you want to be attracted to, and how are you being that magnet to attract that. So how can you be that person that you want to attract energy towards you? So I'm very mindful about everything in my life, the colors that I wear, how I speak to people, the words that I use to communicate with people. And it's very clear in my classes, and I think that's where I can really share that with others. During the pandemic, I actually taught mindful movement classes for healthcare workers. So I gave them a 15-minute break where they were able to tune in with themselves during this time of chaos in their work. But I'm in my classes specifically because I think that's a space that I can actually create for others. It's to give them time to meditate, to give people time to listen to what they're experiencing and feeling, to acknowledge that. I think it's important for us to acknowledge everything that we are thinking and feeling and not to repress anything so that we can ultimately release it. But mindfulness and self-care, meditation, going inward and asking questions about yourself and what you want and what you deserve is also very important.
Going off of Vive, I think, being mindful of what you consume is very important. I think also just being able to talk about it, and like today, this panel and like these questions and the discussion, I think just opens your eyes and your ears and your mind to like different aspects. We all have experienced a lot of the same things, but all of our journeys are very different, with all the things that have been happening in the city and like around the world. I think for me, my parents are older now, and like, I do think about them like going out and like taking care of what they do if they need to go somewhere. Like, I'm always aware of that, but I think having that discussion with them, what you see on the news and what they also consume, is also very important, because it also just gives you a way to help each other out in case it does happen, to one of you. And, God forbid it does happen to anyone that you know, but I think talking about it and having a plan, having a way of like how to counteract that, being courageous and sticking up for yourself, or, sitting down at the pizza place and just owning you being there. I think just having that, strength in yourself to do things like that, I think will help you. And like, yeah.
Real quick, I just want to say one thing. If you are really having a serious concern about your safety, there is a wonderful advocacy group. There's a lot of good ones out there, but one in particular that I've had a recent relationship with is the Asian American Federation. They do a lot of great work. We had this event today, and I wanted to make sure that there was nothing going to happen. And anytime we have an event that's large, actually I do this. And I made one call, and they were like, "Look, we got this." They put me in touch with the neighborhood community organization, which is the local police precinct, and they're in the neighborhood just strolling around. So there are, I know sometimes we get frustrated by the police and some of the actions or inactions, but if you get through to the right people, you can still get the right help, and it just gives you a little bit of peace of mind to know that someone cares about your struggle enough that you can feel a little safer. So I just want to put that out there in case anyone really has concerns.
Yeah, similar. The thing that I would add is the collective care piece, that the ability to find resources and communities that are important to you, like Welcome to Chinatown. If you follow that Instagram, or Safe Walks, that's a great resource for getting home safely. But yeah, I think that's a great, a light that has come from this time, that people are, especially in the AAPI community, are having the conversations of how can we protect each other, how can we be there for each other, and how can we share our stories and normalize these types of conversations. And then as the body, dancer, person, I would recommend reading The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And there's a lot of things that, science has backed up that we have probably during this time and this rise of Asian hate, we have internalized a lot of grief in our body, and it's important to be mindful and honor that. And maybe if some days you actively take a rest. I know that's hard for New Yorkers and dancers to have like a fully off day, but giving yourself time to process that and process it through your body, all those little things of being kind to yourself help to fill your cup so that you can be that person for others, and maybe people can see that example through you. So yeah. Hallelujah. One more.
Hi, my name is Chris. I also came with Anel, my friend earlier. I would like to open by saying thank you so much for all of you coming today, and it's been incredibly inspiring to hear how you've been able to make waves in the field of the arts as an Asian living in America. Actually, I don't know if you know, if you remember East Lee, but that's my brother. Yes, I was taking classes at House of Movement until the pandemic, and then I had to move back to make sure my folks were taken care of. To be more specific, yeah, it's really even what you were talking about visibility. I think that was incredibly insightful, and I would like to add upon that in saying that something that you just mentioned like 5 minutes ago, visibility and also hearing the stories, hearing them passed on, and as part of a conversation. Because I know we are a visually based culture, and a lot of things we do by processing what we see, but I'm a musician, and my question is going to be directed towards you in like 3 minutes in the future, but basically hearing all this, I think, has helped formulate a lot. I've been formulating this question for like 20 minutes. But it's just been very, very inspiring to hear all the different paths and myriad techniques you used to assert your identity as an Asian artist. And I think a lot of people like me it serves us well, very much so. Thank you again. My question, therefore, I'm a musician, I'm a jazz musician, and what you said earlier about specifically partaking in an art form that doesn't belong to you, but with which you resonate with in some part of your life. How did you navigate between asking yourself, like, for me, something that I constantly ask is, am I exchanging and being a part of it, contributing to this culture, or am I appropriating it? Do I have the right to participate and give myself into this, or am I taking away from it? Do any of you have have things that have that kind of feeling that you've gone through before?
I think that's a feeling that's pervasive almost in every endeavor that you take. And I think it's just a matter for me, it's always been a matter of not trying to be or answer questions or doing something that I'm not, or saying something that I don't really know. And then really trying to be an observer, a participant, someone who pays reverence and does things that shows that you're paying reverence to the community. For example, here we were the first studio to have open sessions and these jams, and the things that Minnie was talking about used to take place at our studio as well. And we did it a lot of times for free, or we tried to give back to the folks and to the culture and to the community that gave so much to my life and to the lives of so many people. And I think it's also important that you don't walk around with that doubt, right? That you don't walk around with that self-doubt or that controls your behavior. The best thing you can do is be an amazing artist and show in that artistry, like, I'm an amazing artist because this culture gave me the inspiration to become an amazing artist. And through that artistry, you are giving back, right? And everything we put out in the public space at the end of the day is going to be, over time, a contribution of multiple things. Even hip hop has contributions from Indian culture, right? So fashion is contributions from all over the world now, but it all started in one place and then began to grow. Martial arts was first started, one of the first martial arts is from India, actually. So a lot of what we understand in the world today there's a lot of contributions. And our job is just to try and give that kind, to try to be a contributor, but realize and recognize that the inspiration, culture, and everything comes from a different place. But never feel, I think it's always hard not to, but you shouldn't feel bad about what you're doing because you're aware of it. You're talking about it. And talking about it and making people aware that you're aware shows that you respect it and that you want to learn more and be a part of it. That's what I would say.
I think, well, first, like knowledge, you study what you do, obviously. And even going back to this whole urban thing, it was originally called something else that's not hip hop because to the hip hop OGs, those are not hip hop. So then it became a problem when now they want to reclaim, the styles that people do. So now everything's back to, now everything is choreography. But the reason when, a dance style or hip hop is such an umbrella, so things evolve basically under certain art forms, and how we label it and who it belongs to. That's always going to be an ongoing, evolving conversation. So I think there's, even within the communities themselves, there are people who are not as knowledgeable in this art form as you because you actually studied it. So do you own it more than them? That's also a different conversation. So I think there might not be a perfect answer to, being how to be a good guest in a culture because you're also an artist. You're creating, you're inputting, your creative energy to what you are doing. So ultimately you are changing, and that's how it's supposed to be. Nobody created music or dance style to be like, this is how it's supposed to be only. As an art form, it has its own life. It's gonna evolve, and and because like it's being spread out to the world, everybody's sharing, everybody's putting in their, that's the beauty of art. So I think, certain conversations are necessary because of the political environments, because of like so many other things. But as an artist, I think as long as you have the purest intention, you've done your job, you respected the culture, I think whatever you do with what becomes yours is your right, in my opinion. Yeah.
Wow, they answered it so well. And yeah, I will say that I do believe there's a responsibility when you are studying dance to go to the foundations and really take from those teachers that have studied it or come from it, simultaneously while you're taking choreography classes or things that have evolved from it. So I think a lot of times, like this newer generation may be doing these popular styles, but they haven't studied. And I think it's important in paying respect, not just acknowledging paying respect, but going to the root source and studying foundations is very important. In addition to supporting the new crop of artists that are coming out, I think that that's the responsibility of the artist. Art, like anything valuable, shouldn't come easily. We need to do the work. We need to be academic about it in a way. At the same time, it evolves, and I love everything they both said because it's so brilliant. If it doesn't grow, it kind of it stays stagnant. So I think it's so important to realize and to also forgive yourself that if you don't look exactly or fit into this, you're allowed to make it in a way your own. Like ballet came from, rich white people. But certain bodies don't look great in it. So I'm going to take what I've learned and I studied, I'm going to make it where I see fits and how I can express it. And it goes with any genre. You study it, and how do you bring that into your own artistry? Exactly. Yeah, everything that they said, and I think, as a musician, and if your goal is to, we're all instructors and we're all teachers, so if that is your goal one day, is honoring the people that you've learned from. Jazz is from a culture, so when you're teaching something, you have to teach something correctly. You have to bring it back to where it came from and also teach the history of it. You can't just say, this is this, and then just teach it and then have them also go somewhere and teach it, because then you're not paying homage to it. You're not respecting the culture in that sense. And like Vive said, art is, and Minnie said, like art is evolving so much, but we all dance and do different things. And I think with music, it's also the same way. There's not one artist that's the same as another person. So what you contribute is going to be what you contribute, and it's going to be different. So I think honoring that, and just knowing that, like Pavan said, you are already questioning it, so that already means that you are honoring it. Yeah, so I hope that helps.
Are we ending soon?
Yeah, we're gonna have.
Okay, I just want to try something. I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? Thank you.
I've been waiting.
That spirit guy.
Sorry.
Oh,
I was probably going to explain, but I thought you were like, no. I was going to keep it going, actually.
yeah, I mean, if everyone feels good, I know we did go a little over, but it would be great if there were any closing remarks, and maybe a whole new world is Vive's closing remark. But karaoke is an AAPI heritage, so I'm glad we participated in it. But yeah, if anyone wants to have a closing remark, I think how it resonated with you, what's maybe one thing you'd like to leave our audience with, something that, in that vein.
On the left.
I just want to say, continue doing what you do, and even when sometimes the answers are not clear. Maybe on this journey for a long time, I wasn't very specific. I wasn't like super clear with what I wanted to do with dance, and just let the distractions like be on the side. Continue doing what you know you want to do, and the answers will clarify themselves. Yeah.
You sang. I guess just like be true to yourself, and try not to be a copy of someone else, because that doesn't exist. And I say this a lot in class, especially people who take my beginner class. Like, honor who you are, because you never know if you're inspiring somebody else on the side. Someone may be looking up to you, and you have no idea, because you're just authentically you. Yeah, so don't be anybody else, because that's boring.
I will say this, there's a stereotype that Asian people are very quiet and respectful, and I actually don't mind that stereotype, because I am that way. So in a lot of spaces that aren't like Asian filled, I am very respectful of people's space, and I listen, but a lot of times I feel like I'm not heard because they talk over me. So I just want to say thank you for having this space for our voices to be heard in a way that's active. And I thank also non-Asian people in this room for listening.
I also want to say that, first I want to say thank you to everyone for coming, for being a part of this experience. I know it will be the first of many to come, and I hope that everybody will be a part of it and continue to be a part of the conversation. Because for us to move forward, we do need to work together. We need to talk. We need to listen to one another. And this is a community. We do care about one another. We want to succeed, and we can succeed faster if we work together. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Paul for being a wonderful moderator. And of course, all of the lovely panelists on this. The last thing I will say in regards to the actual topic is that, sometimes I feel like us trying to find this, it's a uniquely immigrant minority or Asian thing to try and find this sort of, identity or purpose, or who am I in this world, and am I doing this right in this world, where many of us never even think about that, right? And not most of us do, but many people don't. And I feel like what we want to do is just be comfortable with who you are. Because who you are is unique and it's important. And as long as you do it in a way that's respectful, there's nothing wrong with who you are. There's no such thing as being this or that, black or white or Asian or other. No, it's you. It's you. That's it. So just be comfortable with who you are.
One more little story from me. But no. Maybe the next one. For anybody who has anybody that you care about that's questioning you or just pressing you with certain answers with why you're doing what you're doing. I'm not that close to my dad. His opinion is very simple and straightforward. If he doesn't like something, doesn't think it's gonna work, he'll let you know. He's not trying to have a deep conversation about it. So we don't really talk. He knows I decided to move here after college to pursue what I want to pursue. And he was like see me on like WeChat, the Chinese social media, posting certain things. Again, we don't talk, and he obviously didn't understand or didn't have any high expectation for me, my decisions. And last time we had dinner, he's like, "So what do you actually do? Like, what do you do in dance? What do you teach? What do you do?" He started. Because he's seeing I'm doing shit. He's seeing I'm making it work. Now he's curious. Now he's trying to find out. Versus like, I don't want to hear about it. So like what you do is going to be the answer to the people that are questioning you. You don't have to answer them now.
Oh yeah, I guess I'll just add just the one theme that, I think that's what everyone is saying, that you're more than enough. Yeah, just add that and keep the conversation going. So, yeah.